Hey, Larry, can you hear me? Larry, if you can hear me, I have something to tell you.
I can hear you.
Oh. Who's that? Robin? Nope. Calling.
Yes, it was Robin. I can hear you.
So it's not showing up on Granicus yet because the meeting hasn't started, I guess. Hey, can you hear me? Larry? Say something more. I don't think I can hear you. I'm gonna call you back from my landline.
Hey, Paul, you're not mute, FYI. Hey, Larry. Larry, can you hear me?
I can.
Getting texts from Rob and Kelly. That they are getting the message that the host will let them in.
Right, and we're working on that. We're just trying to make sure
Okay.
that actual feed
Okay.
is being broadcast right now. And then I'm going to let everybody into the meeting immediately after. Testing, testing, testing. Bob, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Just to make sure I'm giving Testing, 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 testing. Bob, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, I think the broadcast is ready to go. I'm going to let everyone in to the meeting. And then
Okay.
You know a couple of these guys? You probably need to mute us until they're ready.
I'm present here.
If everyone could bear with us just a couple more seconds. We had a couple of technical issues we're trying to get resolved. Larry, just let us know when you're ready to go.
We're ready to go down here, Bob.
Okay, let's go. Jonathan, you want to?
Yes, I was just trying to make sure that we have all our commissioners here, Kyle. All right. At this time now, I'd like to call the CPC meeting for October 27th to order at 1:36 p.m. We'll now have roll call of all commissioners that are present. Commissioner Brown,
Present.
Commissioner Flick, Commissioner Lund,
Present.
Commissioner Mobley, Commissioner Mobley, Commissioner Flick, Commissioner Flick, you're still on mute. All right. Let the record show that Commissioner Flick is present. However, I think she's having some technical difficulties. I'm muting her. Computer.
Present. There I am. There we go.
All right, Commissioner Mobley, are you with us? Commissioner Marshall will not be joining us. Commissioner Steeg.
Here.
Commissioner Stewart is present. Commissioner Weberg.
Present.
Commissioner Whittree should be joining us in the next hour or so. So at this time now, we have a quorum of 6 commissioners present, and we'll continue with the reading of the rules. Order of business. The order of business at the hearing shall be as followed. Call to order and roll call with recording of members present, approval of the minutes, reading of hearing rules, presentation of dockets, staff presentation, applicant presentation, question from members, a recess for 30 minutes, consideration of the docket, public comment, rebuttal by the applicant, question from members, voting, and then adjournment. Presentation of the dockets. The order of the business for each docket shall be as follows. Presentation by the City Planning Commission staff or the Department of Safety and Permit staff. Presentation by the applicant or their representatives. The appellate or the applicant may appear on the behalf of the representative by a duly authorized agent. Only one representative may speak on the behalf of a request and must pre-register with the staff of the City Planning Commission. Other representatives or speakers may sign up to provide comments during the public comment portion of the meeting. The applicant shall be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. Questions from members. The members have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff or applicant. Recess. The commission shall take a 30-minute recess to allow members of the public to comment. Public comment. Rules. Only written public comment will be allowed. Live public comment will not be allowed. No member of the public may submit more than one written comment per agenda item. Time allowed for public comment. The public comment will be made available at the start of the meeting and will close at the end of the 30-minute recess. Public comments must be submitted electronically on a form provided by the City Planning Commission. Any comment missing this information will not be read aloud. Each submission must contain the commenter's first and last name, the commenter's address, whether the commenter is being paid in connection with his or her comments, and the actual agenda item. Reading of public comment. A moderator will read into the record all comments pertaining to that item that have been submitted in accordance with these rules. Comments will be read aloud in a normal speaking voice. The moderator will discontinue reading a comment once it exceeds 2 minutes. Rebuttal by the applicant. Following the public comment period, if there's opposition, the authorized representative of the applicant of the application is allowed a rebuttal not to exceed 3 minutes. Questions from members. Following the public comment and rebuttal, the members have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff or applicant. Voting. Making a motion. The member making a motion shall clearly state their name when making a motion. For example, I, Commissioner Stewart, move to approve, deny the request. Seconding the motion. The member seconding the motion shall clearly state their name when seconding the motion. For example, I, Commissioner Stewart, motion made by the other member. Statement by the chair. The chair will restate the motion, confirming who made and seconded the motion. Voting. The chair will request a verbal vote from each member by roll call. Each member will indicate yay to vote in support of the motion or nay to vote in opposition. At this time now, we'll move to our docket. The adoption of the minutes for September 8, 2020 will be postponed because we actually have not received those minutes. So we will continue with old business proposition deposition 00220.
Mr.
But
Chairman,
this item has been withdrawn. Mr. Rivers,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to announce to everyone on the feed that we've had a couple of little technical difficulties. So if your feed cuts out, this is also streaming on our YouTube channel, and that link is posted on the Granicus website on the agenda page. So if your Granicus feed goes out, you can get the link to the YouTube stream and see the rest of the meeting. Thanks.
Okay. So property disposition 0020 has been withdrawn. So we will continue with our agenda on to zoning docket 08320.
Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. First slide, please, Larry. In May of 2020, the City Planning Commission voted to adopt staff recommendations to allow the use of established multifamily dwellings with less than 5 units and established 2-family dwellings in all zoning districts where these uses are currently a conditional use. Zoning docket 083-20 is a request via City Council motion M-20-279 for a text amendment to the comprehensive zoning ordinance with similar implications and the additional requests to 1, distinguish these established uses from other non-conforming uses, 2, create factors and requirements for the reestablishment of established multifamily and 2-family dwellings, 3, determine if these established dwellings should be permitted by right in all residential zoning districts where multifamily use is currently prohibited or requires a conditional use, and 4, recommend whether conditional uses, overlays, or other standards should govern the redevelopment of established dwellings within residential areas of the city near institutional uses such as universities to ensure that the encroachment of student housing into surrounding neighborhoods does not diminish affordable housing stock. The comprehensive zoning ordinance defines an established multifamily dwelling as a residence with a history of multifamily use, which is authorized to operate as a multifamily residence. This text amendment considers the factors that would allow an established multifamily structure to operate by right. The established multifamily use is distinguished from other non-conforming uses in that there is a documented pattern of small multifamily structures across the city, many of which continue to provide important rental housing to New Orleanians today. As shown in the slide of the 1929 zoning ordinance, the first zoning map of New Orleans permitted multifamily housing stock and most commonly 4-family dwellings, shown in blue, in many of the historic neighborhoods across the city. Subsequent zoning ordinances gradually downzoned most of these areas by changing zoning designations to restrict new development to single or 2-family housing, such that today only 11% of all land in Orleans Parish outside of the CBD permit development of dwellings with more than 4 structures. Next slide, please, Larry. The data on non-conforming use determinations in the last 5 years demonstrates that there is demand to preserve the small multifamily dwellings that exist and rental opportunities they provide across the city. There have been over 200 determinations made by safety and permits for nonconforming dwellings in the last 5 years. The majority of these structures are triplexes or fourplexes, which is indicative of historic zoning regulations. Next slide. That finds that New Orleans is in the midst of an affordable housing crisis. And this is the second way in which the established multifamily use is differentiated from other nonconformities. Unlike other undesirable uses left over from industrial and commercial zoning, housing is urgently needed in New Orleans, especially the type of affordable rental housing many established multifamily structures currently provide. The gulf between what a typical New Orleanian can afford and available housing stock has only widened in the last few years. In 2019, 34% of New Orleans renters spent more than half of their income on housing costs, and the median value of a single-family home has nearly doubled since 2000. As labor shortages and significant increases in the cost of development make it increasingly challenging to build new, affordable rental housing, it has become only more important that the city makes best efforts to maintain existing housing opportunity. A recently published report by Enterprise Community Development Partners found that multifamily dwellings with 3 to 20 units, found in which is represented by New Orleans established multifamily housing stock, comprises 56% of the nation's subsidized housing stock nationwide. Established multifamily structures present naturally affordable, unsubsidized opportunities as well. There's research to suggest that neighborhoods with a mix of housing types ranging from single family to small multifamily are more resilient in periods of economic hardship, and that these range of housing types can also facilitate racial and economic integration in cities. Creating a greater range of housing diversity is a prominent goal in Chapter 6, Housing in Neighborhoods, in the New Orleans Master Plan, which is strongly aligned with the staff's recommendations for this use. Next slide, please. Currently, if the owner of a nonconforming dwelling wishes to make a modification that requires a permit, a modification to an established dwelling, safety and permits must make a determination on 3 factors. 1, if there is a documented legal history of multifamily or 2-family use. 2, how many units are established on the property. And 3, if the use has been continued or not. To reach these determinations, safety and permits considers a range of documents provided by the applicant, including photos, aerial imagery, utility meters, utility bills, leases and rent receipts, and sometimes affidavits. The definition documented legal history includes units which may not have been permitted by the zoning code when they were created but under state law, if zoning does not enforce regulations, if the city does not enforce zoning regulations within a period of 5 or 10 years, the legal use is acquired. Next slide. A nonconforming use may continue to operate as long as safety and permits finds that the use has not been discontinued for more than 6 months or 180 days per section 25.3.c in the CZO. While most nonconforming multifamily structures continue to innocuously operate as rental housing across the city, those that have become vacant for more than 6 months must seek a conditional use from the City Planning Commission and City Council. Many established dwellings that have not maintained legal nonconforming use were vacated following Hurricane Katrina. As a result, many nonconforming dwellings across the city remain damaged and deteriorating. However, dwellings are also at risk of losing legal nonconforming status if a transfer of ownership occurs. Staff has found that some established multifamily structures that have gone through the conditional use process were foreclosed or sat vacant during a succession process. Due to the procedural barriers to maintaining established multifamily structures. And there are a range of negative impacts that continued vacancy of these structures have on New Orleans communities. Next slide, please.
This map shows the areas considered for modification in this text amendment. The purple dots indicate the location of all conditional use applications received by CPC in the last 5 years. There's a strong approval history for the established multifamily dwellings that are reviewed by CPC and City Council. In the last 5 years, only 2 conditional use applications for established multifamily have not been approved by Council. In both cases, the structure had a legal history of more than 5 dwelling units. The conditional use process is a lengthy, discretionary process intended to be reserved for potentially impactful developments that are clearly incompatible with the surrounding area. This does not describe the hundreds of doubles, fourplexes, and triplexes, which have been able to continue to operate as legal non-conforming uses across the city. Additionally, the unanimously positive case history for structures of this type indicates that the conditional use process is an unnecessary use of CPC staff and applicants' time as applied to this housing type. Therefore, staff's original recommendation remains the same. Structures with a legal documented history of 4 or fewer units should be a permitted use. Next slide, please. Staff believe there still should be an opportunity for larger established multifamily structures to be put back into use, given the need for additional affordable housing opportunity in the city and the impracticality of reducing the existing density of larger multifamily structures to singles or doubles. In single or 2-family zoning districts, it is reasonable for multifamily structures providing 5 or more units to continue to be considered through a discretionary process. However, staff recommends permitting existing multifamily structures providing more than 4 units in the MS Medical Service District and HUB1 Neighborhood Business District, which are intended to accommodate higher intensity uses. In addition to modifying use tables, next slide, please. In addition to modifying use tables to reflect these changes, staff recommends modifying the use standards to make the factors and requirements for established dwellings clear. A property owner may renovate and rent units in established multifamily dwelling or 2-family dwelling if 1, the structure has a legal history of 2 units for a 2-family dwelling or 4 or fewer units for a multifamily dwelling, as confirmed by safety and permits through the process described. Or B, the structure has a legal history of multifamily residential use providing more than 4 units, but reduces the number of dwelling units to 4 or fewer. Or C, the established multifamily structure is within a zoning district where the established multifamily use is a permitted use. Or D, legal non-conforming status has been confirmed by the Department of Safety and Permits. Staff also recommends a provision to apply the standard to establish detached dwelling units with a legal history of residential use. Staff also encourages the allowance of improvements to existing housing and modern updates to establish multifamily uses, many of which have delayed maintenance, by allowing the expansion of floor area within the limits of the yard and height requirements. It would not be permitted to increase the number of dwelling units within the structure, where a dwelling unit in this case includes a kitchen, bathrooms, and separate entrance to the structure. Next slide, please. Staff believes that the use of overlay districts to limit the allowances of established multifamily uses is not an appropriate tool to address concerns regarding student housing. An overlay of this type would restrict opportunities for naturally affordable housing in some high opportunity neighborhoods with good access to jobs, amenities, and commercial corridors. This map shows all educational campuses in blue and areas permitting higher density housing in gold. This reveals that there are few areas that permit multifamily housing in areas surrounding educational campuses, already serving to limit the provision of multifamily housing in these areas. Staff does not believe that it is the provision or reestablishment of multifamily housing that is the cause of any issue relating to student housing, and the issue of student housing should remain apart from the question of established multifamily structures. Therefore, staff does not recommend any conditional use overlay or other standard that considers the established multifamily use alongside student housing, as these are separate issues that each merit separate consideration. Given the need to maintain existing housing opportunity in high opportunity areas, and in pursuit of master plan goals to expand the array of housing stock at an appropriate scale for New Orleans' neighborhood, staff recommends modified approval of zoning docket 08320. However, during the development of this report, staff received several comments that they did not have time to address in this report. For this reason, staff would like to defer this issue until the November 10th meeting.
Thank you. At this time, do we have a representative from the City Council? If not, do we have any questions from any commissioners or staff as it relates to this zoning docket?
I have one. I think your comment about the student housing addressed this, but I want to understand more precisely. How does this interact with the current doubles to dorms (D2D) issues that are the city is experiencing? If something's traditionally a double, it would stay a double. We're talking about multifamily units where there are different addresses that differentiate the units. If it's a fourplex, it's units A, B, C, and D, or it's 2201, 2203, et cetera. But how does it differentiate with doubles to dorms where people are taking a 2-bedroom double and putting 4 people on each side, making it an 8-plex?
Commissioner, if I could respond to that. So the neighborhood in which the doubles to dormitory IZD exists is a 2-family district, so that those existing 2-family dwellings would be normally allowed to expand. Currently, the IZD would require them to provide an additional parking space for every additional bedroom that is provided under a construction project or a conversion of a different room to a bedroom. So there's probably a rather limited number of established multifamily that aren't already occupied in that neighborhood. Currently, the way the standards are written, we would allow the expansion of the floor plan to not increase any number of units, but to be able to modernize the amenities such as add a bathroom or a laundry room or perhaps another bedroom. However, currently that would also be under the IZD. So if another bedroom was added, they would have to provide an additional parking space.
Well, maybe my question is a little different. How is so you drew a line at 4 units versus 5 units in some ways. How is the number of units determined?
That's determined by the Department of Safety and Permits through a documented legal history. And as they mentioned, that could be the existing floor plan. That could be if they still have evidence of the number of electric meters that had previously existed, or lease agreements showing a certain number of units, or perhaps Sydney, you want to expand on that because you read earlier from the list of things that Safety and Permits.
Yeah, I mean it's water bills and electric bills and that kind of thing. Does it look at the bathrooms? In other words, if you have 4 bedrooms but 1 bathroom, is that a 1 unit or is that a 4 unit project?
That's usually determined by the number of kitchens you have. If you have 1 kitchen, you're typically going to be 1 dwelling unit.
That's all that.
Yeah, Rob.
Yeah.
Rob, if I can just add, I think that's, you're touching on one of the issues that really is hard to figure out a solution for, because the concern about the doubles to dormitories is that the developers are essentially taking advantage of the current definition for a dwelling unit, in that they are taking a single unit,
right,
and expanding, because the current family definition for a single unit is 4 unrelated individuals. So if they put 4 bedrooms in there and lease out each of those bedrooms individually to a student, it's still a single dwelling unit under the law, but there are 4 separate leases to 4 separate individuals who are living together. And the problem that we've had from a zoning perspective is that same, from a land use perspective, that same construct is what gets you a group home, is what gets you a just 4 people sharing an apartment. It gets you affordable housing. And so the concern that we've always had about clamping down on the D2Ds is that it also clamps down on all of the other types of housing that that fall into that category, which is quite significant. And so I agree with Paul. I don't think it's as big of an issue with the existing the way that we've looked at it, but yeah, it's a difficult issue to kind of come up with a zoning solution for, because
Yeah, no, I appreciate
of
that.
the limitations, right?
So yeah, I appreciate that. That's so. Let me make sure I understand. So if this goes through, and then we have a fourplex that a historic fourplex that can prove they were a historic fourplex, and they're recognized, it's a permitted use now, it becomes law, and they become a permitted use, and they have 4 units, then using the D2D loophole, as we'll call it, you could put 4 people in each of the 4 units of the fourplex, because you're allowed up to 4 people per dwelling unit, and now we have 4 dwelling units. Is that right?
Theoretically, provided that there was there was enough room in the building envelope
Right.
to accommodate a structure that size.
Right. And then the reasoning of the staff is for being in favor of this, though, is that most of these are located outside of the D2D area, and that the benefits outweigh the costs because of the affordable housing crisis, et cetera.
Yes, and I would add there's nothing currently to prohibit the owner of a double from expanding the buildable area versus the owner of an established multifamily
Right.
going up to the maximum height and the maximum buildable area on the ground
Right.
floor.
Okay.
Are there any more questions for our staff from any other commissioner? If not, we'll continue to zoning docket 08420.
Zoning docket 08420 is a request for a conditional use permit. For conditional use to permit an established multifamily dwelling in an HURD2 district. The request would allow the existing structure, which has the physical design and layout indicative of multifamily residential use, to be utilized as a multifamily dwelling. Previously vacated for renovation, the structure is currently vacant and has lost its legal non-conforming status for a multifamily dwelling. Due to its small size, the multifamily structure would generate only moderate impacts relative to overall levels of activity, noise, traffic, and parking demand at the site. The staff believes that the request is generally consistent with the master plan and the general purpose and intent of the applicable zoning district regulations, and therefore supports the application. Further, the proposal also meets the definition of established multifamily dwelling and the standards of Article 20, Section 23W of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, which requires the documentation of a legal history of multifamily residential use and the confirmation that the physical character of the structure is indicative of a history of multifamily residential use. The subject site has a demonstrable legal history of multifamily use, and as documented in Addendum A, issued by the Department of Safety and Permits. Secondly, the physical character of the structure is indicative of a history of multifamily residential use. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 08420, subject to 3 provisos.
Thank you. At this time now, do we have a representative for the applicant for 8420 with us? From New Orleans?
Yes, you do.
All right. At this time now, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm Ilsa Style, representing New Orleans Redevelopment Fund. And just first, I want to thank you for taking the time to review our submission. I'm here today just requesting a conditional use for our property located at 322 North Dorgenwa. After purchasing our multifamily property at a bank foreclosure, we were only able to open up 3 out of the 5, open up accounts for 3 out of the 5 units with Entergy. And we were unable to connect the last 2 units due to this non-conforming use. So I'm here requesting conditional use to permit this established multifamily dwelling in a HURD2 district.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for staff or for the applicant from any commissioner? Are there any questions from any commissioner? If not, thank you, and we'll continue on with the agenda. Zoning docket 8520.
Zoning docket 8520 is a request for conditional use to permit a single-family residence in a GPD General Plan Development District. The site, located along Woodland Highway, is currently wooded and undeveloped. The applicant intends to clear a portion of the wooded area in order to construct a single-family residence on a portion of the site. Single-family residences are conditional uses in the GPD district. The request proposes development that is fairly limited in scope and would have minimal impacts on the GDP district and surrounding properties. The applicant is intending to maintain the majority of the site as permeable green space and is only proposing to construct a single-family structure, which is important because the GPD district is intended to balance development desires against the need to protect natural areas, including this relatively undeveloped wooded portion of Algiers. The staff believes that utilizing the property as single-family residence will have minimal impact on adjacent properties and would be largely unimpactful to adjacent properties in the environment and environmentally sensitive areas in close proximity to the site. The proposal generally meets the approval standards set forth in Article 4 of the CZO and does not interfere with the master plan. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of the proposed single-family residence subject to 3 provisos.
Thank you. At this time, do we have Mr. Perry or Ms. Barnes with us, or a representative of the applicant?
Yes, we're here.
Hello.
How you doing? Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Ralph Perry.
Crystal Perry.
And we are just, first of all, glad that you guys were able to hear our application. And we are, just as Mr. Martin stated, trying to do a conditional use on this piece of property. We love the area. We already live in this area, and we were hoping to get another house built on this property for our primary residence.
All right. Well, thank you. So do we have any questions from any commissioner for the applicants or staff? All right. If not, thank you, Ms. Barnes and Mr. Perry. And we'll continue on with our agenda. Next on the agenda is zoning docket 8620.
Zoning docket 8620 is a request by Barcello and Webb LLC for a zoning change from an HURD2 historic urban 2-family residential district to an HUMU historic urban neighborhood mixed use district at 2301 Gallier Street in the Upper Ninth Ward. The subject property is currently improved with a community garden, which the applicants run and maintain. The applicants propose continuing the use of the site as a community garden, but expanding the use to include a continuing public market. The applicants propose hosting a regular farmers market at the site, which will sell produce grown on site in addition to other vendors selling produce, food, and goods not grown or produced on site. The subject property exists in a primarily residential neighborhood, with the majority of uses existing as single or 2-family dwellings. The HUMU district is generally applied to multi-block corridors or to large-scale developments as opposed to a single lot of record. The site has a history of existing non-residentially as a school. However, the building is no longer existing. A zoning change to HUMU would conflict with the master plan and does not meet the criteria in the Commission's non-conforming use policy. Additionally, the proposal does not meet all standards for approval in Article 4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Therefore, staff is not supportive of a zoning change to HUMU and recommends denial of the zoning change.
All right, thank you. At this time now that we have an applicant or a representative for zoning docket 8620 present.
Yes, we do. Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my video is not coming through for some reason. My name is Andres Barcello. I am owner of Barcello and Webb LLC with my wife as well. We are requesting this specifically because we've been having a growing need or reaching out from neighbors in the area asking for a farmer's market, specifically the sale of goods, grains, locally grown produce. This is something that is just not available in that area. I believe it's at least a 5-minute drive in any direction to a real grocery store. And this would provide a need or provide a answer to a need for real fresh vegetables in the area, as well as providing small businesses and farmers in the area, especially people of color, with the opportunity to be able to sell their produce in an area that needs it desperately. We've been using it as a community garden and growing, but there seems to be more interest from the community for a farmer's market that is recurring. And that's why we're asking for this change. Now, if HUMU is not the correct designation for this, we are open to any other designation that will allow us to have a permanent market at this space. We looked at the temporary use permits, and they were going to cost more than we could even generate from vendors' fees. So it seemed impossible for us to do that without taking a loss, which is why we went this direction. And we also have one thing that was mentioned in the summary was that the parking would be an issue for the neighborhood. I want to point out that that's not the case. The church, the St. Mary of the Angels, has volunteered their parking lot for this purpose and is in support of our farmers market if we do it. And to make that even more clear, we have adjoining properties to us that are basically empty lots, vacant lots. We have torn down buildings. This would be nothing but an improvement for the neighborhood. I understand it doesn't go with the master plan, but it is something that does have a need and a desire for and would really serve the neighbors in that community.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for staff or for the applicant from any commissioner?
Hi, Commissioner Lee. I have a question.
Yes.
For the applicant, the St. Mary's site is 2 city blocks with no traffic on the through street. And I'm curious as to why the market that is ongoing cannot be provided in that parking lot or a portion of that parking lot rather than requiring a zoning change. Also, I am your neighbor.
Okay. The reason is simply that we're doing it and the church is not. I don't know that the church even has the permitting necessary to be able to host that sort of thing. As my understanding went, their zoning is not the appropriate zoning for a farmer's market either. And we didn't ask them if we can have the market in their lot instead of ours. We were just trying to use what we had. So if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, Commissioner Lund.
Yes, thank you. This question for the applicant. Also, is this a nonprofit or for-profit?
Currently, I'm running this as a for-profit, but I like to say it's functioning like a nonprofit. The only reason we haven't done a nonprofit is we don't want to have to deal with formation of a new entity, a board, and this and that and the other. But we are not operating at a profit, even though it is a for-profit business that owns the property.
Right. I don't think it's.
We are taking nothing but losses on the property.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that's relevant in terms of the staff's recommendations or the master plan. I'm just trying to think if there's a way you could work with the church to accomplish what you're trying to do and gain approval for it. So I don't have a solution. I just thought if that, considering as a nonprofit and small, working with the church might open up new possibilities.
What were you recommending?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm bringing this up with no recommendations, just a general thought that there may be more possibilities that open up if it's not for profit and you have a nonprofit entity across the street who may be interested in working with you.
Okay, that you can't give me any sort of
no, actually,
clarity on how that.
I've learned a lesson not to bring up these kind of ideas. Okay, I'm sorry, I do not have a specific suggestion for you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from any other commissioners for either applicant or staff?
Commissioner Flick, I have a question for the applicant. Is the intent for this to operate every day, or is this a weekly farmers market situation?
Currently, people are asking for more than once a month. So this is not a daily occurrence. This is at most. And I don't think we can do that or have the staff to do that, to have it once a week. I don't think we're planning for once a week. We're planning for at least 2 times a month. And one of the reasons we were applying for the zoning change as well was to try and have some sort of a legal status so that we could start accepting food stamps as well for these vegetables and fruits and food vendors as well.
Okay. Any other questions from any other commissioners? All right. If not, thank you for your time, and we'll continue on moving to zoning docket 8720.
The next item is zoning docket 8720, a request for a conditional use to permit an established 2-family dwelling in an SRS suburban single-family residential district. The staff finds that the proposal meets the definition for an established 2-family dwelling and the standards of Article 20, which require the documentation of the legal history of 2-family residential use, and the confirmation that the physical character of the structure is indicative of a history of 2-family residential use. Staff therefore recommends approval of zoning docket 8720, subject to 4 provisos.
All right, at this time, do we have the applicant for 8720 with us? If you're with us, please state your name and address for the record. Mr. Dennis, are you with us? Okay. Do we have a representative for zoning docket 8720?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yes. My name is Anthony Emoka. I'm representing Dr. Winsor Dennis, the owner of that property. And basically why we're here is because the property caught on fire is 2 family residents, and basically it has been vacant because of the fire. So we're here to restore it to 2 family residents. No reduction in size, no addition in size, just to restore it to the way it used to be.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Are there any questions for the representative or staff as it relates to zoning docket 8720? If there are no questions, we'll continue on with the agenda. Zoning docket 8820.
I'm sorry, it's Commissioner Lund. One quick question is for the applicant. Are you aware of the provisos, what they are, and is the applicant amenable to those?
Yes, we are aware of the provisos, and I don't think we have any problem with those.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Commissioner Stewart, thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions for the applicant or for staff as it relates to zoning docket 8720? If not, we'll continue on with the agenda, zoning docket 8820.
This is Stephen. Zoning docket 8820 is a proposal for new construction of a single-story, multi-unit commercial building that would occupy the entirety of the square bounded by Industry, Piety, Florida streets in the upper 9th Ward. And it's within an SB2 district that is a commercial district that's positioned at really the nexus between the former Desire housing development, which is now known as the Estates, and the Florida housing development site to its south. And so this district has historically, served the residents of those developments and of the surrounding residential area, and was used commercially until Hurricane Katrina. The site went vacant and was demolished following Hurricane Katrina, and now there is a proposal to redevelop it with this a multi-unit commercial property. The reason this requires approval by the Planning Commission and Council is because one of the units is to exceed 25,000 square feet. That unit would be used as office space by a pair of nonprofit entities. The zoning district limits commercial use to 25,000 square feet by right, and so the fact that this would be a bit larger at 32,000 square feet triggers conditional use review. The review is to make sure that the use is appropriate for the site, both in scale as well as land use impact. In fact, it is appropriate. The office use is not particularly impactful in general, and the scale of this development, while it's large, is proportional to the scale of the site. So it's designed appropriately for the context, has been considered by the Design Advisory Committee, and the staff is recommending approval subject to a number of provisos that have to do with permitting and design requirements that will be addressed as the design is further developed. I'll note that the staff is recommending one waiver, which is of a requirement that the parking lot be positioned sort of behind the site. It's not an opportunity to do that at this site because it says frontage on 4 streets, and so necessarily the parking lot must be positioned along one of those streets. So again, the staff recommendation is approval subject to one waiver and 15 provisos.
Thank you, Stephen. At this time, do we have a representative from the Desired Community Housing Corporation?
Yes, this is Trent Husser with Trap and Clear Architects.
Okay. You already stated your name, but just state your address and your relationship as far as in representing the applicant. And then you have 3 minutes to present.
Yes, this is Trent Husser with Trap and Clear Architects. We are representing our client, Desired Community Housing Corporation. Like Stephen said, this is a replacement project facilitating the headquarters for the nonprofit Desired Community Housing. The new facility is seated over the former facility's location, and it's a similar size footprint and will be matching the existing building's location as well, approximately 50,000 square foot, and includes 5 tenant spaces along with Desires. The project also includes this 40,000 square foot or so parking lot within the same general location as the previous building. I have 2 questions beyond that about 2 of the provisos. That's the only thing I need or would like to clarify on.
Okay.
Proviso 2 is referencing the CZO section 14.3.8.1.c with a minimum height of 12-foot ceilings. And the only reason I'm asking for clarification is that our current building design shows the top of our bar joist steel is at 16'2" with a maximum depth of 2-foot bar joist. So that would be able to have a 12'10" ceiling. And I'm more curious about what determines the ceiling height clearance. And is this considered meeting it if we were able to provide a 12'10" ceiling?
I can answer that. Yeah, what you're describing would meet it. The point of the regulation is to ensure that you have a pretty decent window height kind of on the exterior of a commercial building. And so if the finished floor to the ceiling is 12'10", then you would meet that regulation.
Okay. The other proviso was proviso 6 in reference to exterior signage. My only question would be, since some of these tenants, a few tenant spaces won't be coming in until potentially post-building construction, can that be done as a separate permit so that we would still be able to obtain a building permit for construction?
Yeah, it's common to do that. Basically, after this goes through council and presumably is approved by ordinance, the final plans you give to the staff for approval would simply have a note that says that signage is to be done separately, and that all signage will comply with the regulations, and then you could submit it at such time that the signage is ready to be permitted.
Okay, that's all the questions that we had.
All right, thanks, Trent. At this time now, Any questions or comments from Commissioner for either the applicant, representative, or staff? Any questions or comments from any commissioner? If not, we'll continue with the agenda and we'll move to zoning docket 8920. And I just want to remind the public now, at this time, you can start submitting those public comments and they'll close at the end of the recess. Zoning docket 8920.
This is a request that would allow an existing brewery, which was permitted to have a bar and live performance as a secondary use under a previous zoning docket, ZD 4619. So this amendment would expand the outdoor space on an adjacent city-owned lot. This particular lot is located at the corner of Thalia Street and South Broad Street, and it measures approximately 7,600 square feet, and it's currently vacant. The applicant proposes to lease the space from the city to provide additional outdoor space adjacent to their already approved outdoor beer garden area and to their indoor brewery and tap room. They intend to use the space as a family-friendly space, flex space, a third of which approximately would be used for seating and the rest for open play area. No permanent improvement is proposed on the site. Instead of permanent or attached seating, the applicant indicated that they would like to utilize folding chairs and tables that would be removed each evening. While the expansion would increase the customer capacity of the site, this additional outdoor space is not expected to draw significantly more visitors than the already approved brewery. Rather, it would allow visitors to practice social distancing on a larger outdoor space. And even if the proposed outdoor area was to create an increased level of noise, the location of the site at the corner of the South Broad and Thalia Streets, adjacent to heavy commercial and some industrial uses, would not have excessive impacts on surrounding residential uses. Therefore, we are supporting the request. We're recommending approval, subject to 2 waivers and 18 provisos. One of those waivers and 2 of these provisos actually are for the amendment itself. The rest are from the original conditional use.
All right, thank you. At this time now, do we have a representative from Broad Strokes LLC?
My name is Adam Ritter. Good afternoon, everybody.
How you doing, Adam? Please state your name, address, and then also how you're representing the applicant, if you're the owner or the actual applicant.
My name is Adam Ritter. I am part of Broad Strokes LLC. We are located at 3940 Thalia Street.
And at this time now, you have 3 minutes for your presentation.
Yeah, Sabine did a beautiful job expressing what we're looking to do. Really, I don't want to belabor the point. I think we all understand that in today's time, it's important for us as a business and for people to feel comfortable in utilizing outdoor space for a variety of reasons. We feel as though that it's critical for our business in order to move a lot of our on-premise sales and visitation to the outside of the building. And so essentially, that's probably the extent of it at this point.
All right, thank you. At this time now, any questions or comments from any commissioners?
Commissioner Mobley, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Mobley.
Mr. Ritter, I'm enthusiastic about outdoor spaces for live entertainment, which we desperately need, and certainly for family-friendly spaces. And as someone with a school-aged child who goes to school across the street, I'm very curious to hear about your plans for fencing and safety with both of those intersections.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. So as far as fencing goes, well, let me start back with the aspect of a family-friendly aspect, which Sabine had touched on. So the city-owned lot, which is 1400 South Broad, in our thoughts is going to be utilized as the family-friendly version of a beer garden. And then our hopes were to have a over 21 beer garden, which is the small triangle version that's already in place, as you can see on Broad, where it meets MLK essentially. As far as fencing goes, we have fencing that starts at the point of, we'll say, Broad and in between Thalian. I'm not sure exactly where. It's basically where the apron comes in. So fencing starts there, and it's continuous all the way around to where the marquee is. So it would go up Broad, make the belly, make the turn at Thalia, and finish itself all the way down at the marquee of the entrance of the actual brewery itself. And it's a solid state metal fence from that perspective. And then at the base of that fence, to help deal with the curve at the pumping station, where drivers unfortunately drive a little too courageous. We did put in on our property there some larger 6,000 pound capacity bricks. So if anybody decides to come off the road, they would hit that prior to anything.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your question, Commissioner Mobley. Are there any other questions or comments from any other commissioner?
No, I want to echo what Commissioner Mobley said, and I want to thank the applicant. That was an incredibly thoughtful response and answer. We have been sorely needing family-friendly outdoor music for a long time. I know that as my fellow commissioner, the father of an elementary school child who loves to be out and about in it, at this time, finding ways to do that has been difficult. So this is joyous, and your response to the question was outstanding. So thank you for this application.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other comments or questions for the applicant or staff as relates to zoning docket 8920? If not, thank you, Mr. Adam, and we'll continue on moving to zoning docket 9020.
Zoning docket 9020 is a request by City Council motion for a property located at 13350 Interstate 10 East Service Road for a planned development to create a single-family residential development that is targeted for retired seniors. The proposal includes a community center, 2 parks, and a transportation hub. The developer is Giving Hope, a nonprofit that provides food, shelter, and other basic needs to the community. The reason for the request is that single-family residences are not permitted within the subject C3 heavy commercial district. Therefore, the applicant is seeking planned development approval. Article 5, Section 5.3, Planned Development Exceptions from District Regulations allows exceptions from the base zoning district regulations in certain circumstances. The request requires an exception from Table 15.1, permitted and conditional uses to allow single-family use in the C3 heavy commercial district. Additionally, the request would require exceptions of the site design standards contained in Table 15.2, bulk and yard regulations. The subject property is an approximately 17.25 acre undeveloped lot that abuts the I-10 East Service Road in New Orleans East. The subject site is within a C3 heavy commercial district that is intended to provide for auto-oriented heavy commercial uses. This project was previously considered in the context of zoning docket 6920, which was a zoning change request from a C3 heavy commercial district to an MU2 high intensity mixed use district. The zoning change request was recommended for denial by the staff and the City Planning Commission and was subsequently withdrawn by the applicant before being reviewed by the City Council. The zoning change request was found objectionable because the proposed MU2 district does not align with the site's general commercial future land use designation as detailed in Appendix A of the CZO and is therefore inconsistent with the master plan. This request also the staff cannot support because it is also not consistent with the master plan's general commercial future land use designation, which does not contemplate single-family residential development. Therefore, the staff recommends denial of zoning docket 9020.
And thank you. So this applicant was actual by city council motion. Do we have anyone from the city council or a representative that's a part of this zoning docket?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Duhan.
Yeah, I'm Troy Duhan.
Please state your name and address for the record and your relationship to the zoning docket, and then you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Troy Duhan, 812 Lakeshore Boulevard, Slidell, Louisiana, 70461. I am the founder of the Giving Hope Foundation. So let me start by saying I've been owning this property for a very long time. I actually own most of the automobile dealerships out in this corridor. And like many people 15, 18 years ago, I had a vision of expanding. But since that time, things have changed out here. And even after Katrina, as we started feeding people, we've been feeding people now close to 18 years. What we have seen is a huge demand beyond what we could ever imagine on food needs, and predominantly the seniors. So every day as we come in and we do feeding, we cook 1,000 to 1,200 hot meals a day, and we're probably feeding anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 people a day. And the vulnerability of the seniors is growing and growing. So as we've done research, we realized there's a very large housing shortage for the seniors. So the reason we're proposing this is to do something that's really never been done before. You're going to take an independent senior community, partner with a foundation that's going to be about a $3 million compound. The whole project is right at about $10 million. So it's a lot of money. And on behalf of my family and my foundation, we're putting a significant amount of money up to help the seniors, because every day I am watching these people come in and the lines are not getting shorter. I mean, literally our best year was 4 million pounds we gave away. This year we're on track to give away 8 million pounds of food. And predominantly the vulnerability is to seniors. So I understand it's not part of the original design. I bought this property almost 20 years ago because of that design. But that's not what the market is today. And there are people who need to be helped. And the beautiful thing about this is, like I mentioned earlier, I don't remember the last time there was a $10 million project in East New Orleans. And I'm very, very sensitive to a lot of the residents because a lot of them are my customers. And I've been knowing these people for a very long time. I've been out here since 1995. But you got to understand that it is going to be upscale project, tier 1, because I own $35 million of commercial real estate around it. If it goes south, I'm the guy that has the most to lose. So that's not going to happen, because at the end of this project, it comes back to the foundation. And then my estate and my kids will manage it as though they own it. So I know it's not part of the original design. I bought this land almost 20 years ago because of that design. The auto industry and all that is just not what the property needs today. So that's kind of what where we're at. And again, I just want people to understand we're very sensitive to the area, and we're going to protect it because we have the most to lose when you consider $35 million of commercial property around this project.
All right, thank you, Mr. Duhan. Are there any questions from Mr. Duhan from any commissioner? Are there any questions for Mr. Duhan? Staff. If not, we will continue on to design review 13720.
Design review 13720 is a request to permit the demolition of a one-story structure located in the Central Business District as required by Section 26-2 of the Municipal Code of Ordinances. The structure is located in a CPD 7 Bioscience District, and its municipal address is 380 South Liberty Street. The subject site and the adjacent lot fronting Gravier Street have historically been used as one parcel since at least the 1950s. The subject site contains what was once an accessory structure that housed the mechanical equipment for the hotel located on the adjacent lot, which is currently being redeveloped. Both the hotel and the subject accessory structure have been vacant since at least 2005. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing accessory structure and is in the process of finalizing plans for future development with Tulane University as an addition to their medical campus located downtown, the construction for which will most likely start within the year. The proposed demolition would remove a non-conforming one-story masonry structure containing 2,240 square feet of area. The structure will eventually be replaced with a building that conforms to current zoning and design regulations. The existing structure has no transparent windows and only one access point on the side of the building. A blank wall faces South Liberty Street with an approximately 30-foot front yard that is entirely paved and impervious. The staff conferred with the Historic District Landmarks Commission, which has no objection to the proposed demolition. The removal of an unsightly brick structure lacking fenestration should not negatively impact the character and urban design of the area. Conversely, the addition of a new structure that must meet current design standards will improve this location by activating the street. Granting the demolition request will create an opportunity for future development that is more these reasons. Is 13720.
All right. Thank you so much. At this time, now is the applicant present?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Cullen Momus. I'm the development director with North Companies, a developer for the project located at 3221 Tulane Avenue. Just like to thank Rachel and staff's work on this and their recommendation. We acquired this lot along with the former Warwick Hotel, which is adjacent to this site, located right on Duncan Plaza. Right now, we are working on renovating the former hotel into student housing for Tulane University's medical campus, along with some commercial space on the ground floor that'll be used for the surrounding area. Our plan is to develop this lot in the future, as mentioned, along with code standards that are required for future development. And really our goal is just to get this site cleared so that we can begin moving forward with plans and not have any additional hurdles when we're ready to move forward. Our goal is to be able to move forward within the next year and just appreciate your consideration on this. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments in reference to the design review 13720 from any commissioner? Questions for staff, comments? All right. If not, we'll continue on with the agenda.
Thank you.
To subdivision docket 8920.
Subdivision docket 8920 is a request by the City of New Orleans, and it involves the old Gentilly landfill site in New Orleans East, 3rd Municipal District, and bounded by Almonaster Avenue, Grant Street, the Mississippi River, Gulf Outlet, and Elaine Street. The municipal addresses are 9130 and 10200 Almonaster Avenue. Because this re-subdivision will result in the creation of more than 5 lots, it's classified as a major subdivision and thus requires review by the City Planning Commission in accordance with Article 3, Section 312 of the subdivision regulations. The landfill was used for disposal of municipal waste from the 1960s until it closed in 1986. Following Hurricane Katrina in 2005, the landfill was again pressed into service on an emergency basis to receive hurricane-generated debris. The landfill was the subject of a recent class action litigation in which the court noted that the city of New Orleans did not own all of the land beneath the landfill's footprint and found that the city had appropriated the real property rights of private citizens by its exercise of police power or power of eminent domain in pursuit of a legitimate public purpose. Accordingly, the city is required to compensate those affected citizens for the private property that was taken. This subdivision is intended to facilitate that mandate. The proposed subdivision will create 23 lots from a large assortment of lots, parcels, municipal squares, and public land survey system sections. Collectively, this assortment encompasses over 700 separate lots or parcels, more than 20 municipal squares, and the rights of way of more than 20 quote unquote paper streets. Because the proposed subdivision is a necessary component of the court mandated compensation owed by the city to private citizens and is consistent with the master plan, the staff recommends approval of subdivision docket 8920, subject to 1 waiver and 3 provisos.
All right, thank you. At this time, we have a representative from the city to speak in reference to the subdivision docket. And if we don't have a representative, are there any questions from any commissioner as it relates to the subdivision docket?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Jennifer Crutchman. I'm the real estate administrator and also the Gentilly landfill designee for the city in the class action. The application represents probably more than 2 years of work trying to get this right with the existing lots to be included. So we're asking the commission to approve it at this time.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. So at this time, are there any comments or questions for staff as it relates to the subdivision docket? If not, we'll continue on to our last item. And I just want to remind the public that they can fill out a form to make any public comments on any of the dockets that we're taking up today. So make sure that you fill it out, and that will actually close at the point that we end recess. So now we'll have the last item on the agenda, number 13, consideration of the proposed 2021 regular scheduled meeting for City Planning Commission.
So the meeting schedule that is suggested by staff is the typical meeting schedule of the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of every month in 2021, with the exception of November and December, which would have 1 meeting per month on the 2nd Tuesday of each month.
Thank you, Stephen. I think that we will continue to have meetings virtual, and once we can meet back at City Hall chambers, we will do so. But for the main point, it will continue to be virtual at this point. Any comments from any other commissioner about the schedule? All right. The time now is 2:50, and the chair will entertain a motion for a 30-minute recess.
So this is Commissioner Steig. I move for a 30-minute recess to 3:20.
I second
by Brown.
It's been moved by Commissioner Steig for a 30-minute recess and then to return back at 3:20. And that motion was seconded by Commissioner Brown. Is there any further discussion on that motion? If not, I'll call the question and we'll take bring it to a vote. Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Flick. Commissioner Flick, if you ever still having issues. Okay. Commissioner Flick.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Okay, thumbs up. Commissioner Flick votes in support. Commissioner Lund.
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley.
Yes.
Commissioner Steig.
Do the thumbs up and a yes.
Commissioner Stewart, yes. Commissioner Weaver,
Yeah, as it's the last day of voting early, Commissioner Flick and Steve voting twice makes me uncomfortable. So I'm just going to vote once and say yes.
Commissioner Witchery. All right, she's not back with us. All right, so at this time now we'll reconvene at 3:20.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, the time now is 3:20. Let me check and see. Commissioners, if you're back, please turn your cameras on so I can see if you're back. All right, so we'll start off with a roll call. Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Flick,
Present.
Commissioner Lund, Commissioner Mobley,
Present.
Commissioner Steve.
Here.
Commissioner Stewart's present. Commissioner Weaver.
Present.
Commissioner Whittree. Okay. Let the record reflect, I think only Commissioner Lund is not with us at this time now. All right. And we'll move on to our first zoning docket that we need to take action on, and that's zoning docket 8320.
Mr. Chair, I think Stephen needs just a few more minutes to compile the public comments that were coming in.
Okay.
Okay, I just sent them, so you should be receiving them.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Stephen, do you know if we received any public comment for zoning docket 8320?
Yes, we did.
Paul, do you have the document ready?
Yeah, just one moment. I'm printing it out to read from. All right. I'm ready to go. Zoning docket 8320. First comment is from Nicole Weber, 2131 Bienville, New Orleans, in support of the application. In my experience, there are many historically multifamily properties that are 3 or 4 units with at least one of the units occupied by full-time tenants or owners. However, because the underlying zoning district does not allow for 3 to 4 unit residential buildings, when the property was renovated after Katrina, only 2 units were able to be renovated. In most cases, the property owner was forced to file a change of use from multifamily to 2-family in order to get a building permit. Essentially, they had to forfeit their legal non-conforming use in order to renovate any of the units. 15 years later, these buildings sit with vacant and gutted units that present an opportunity for affordable housing. Typically, when we file a legal non-conforming use application to request verification of the multifamily house, we submit copies of past and present leases to prove the legal non-conforming use through occupancy. The leases often prove that the redevelopment of these historically multifamily buildings are providing affordable housing either through below market rate rents or subsidized lease agreements, existing 3, 4, and 5 unit houses, or an opportunity for new affordable housing units to become available in a very short period of time because the cost of construction to renovate them is much less than new construction or conversion of another type of use into residential. Should this motion be adopted by the City Council, we will see an immediate opportunity for locals to offer newly renovated and code compliant units for affordable rents in our historic urban and historic core neighborhoods that are close to public transportation, schools, jobs, parks, and businesses. The more units we have available, the more advantageous it will be for our residents or displaced residents seeking affordable housing options. Next comment is from Leah LeBlanc, 4640 South Carrollton Avenue, representing Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance, a paid representative in support of this application. As a representative of the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance, we ask the City Planning Commission to support this zoning docket. As you know, we are in the midst of affordable housing crisis that was present before and then exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic. Once again, we encourage you to explore affordable housing opportunities by moving to establish and expand quadplexes in New Orleans. Multifamily housing, along with affordable set-asides, are essential to undoing the racist foundation our current housing system is built on. We applaud this effort and urge all public officials to put housing first by seeking ways to create and sustain affordable housing, especially for our vulnerable populations and essential workers who keep us safe and make the city what it is. Next is from Chunlin Leonard, 1414 Audubon Street. Would like to provide information or request information regarding the application. The CPC recommendations related to zoning docket 8320 directly contradict the City Council's requirement that the CPC propose changes to establish consistency and continuity with the existing code. The recommendations also undermine the intent of the CZO and the city's master plan to preserve certain historic neighborhoods unique to New Orleans. The CZO and master plan clearly intend to preserve the character of certain historic neighborhoods. However, the CPC recommends that established multifamily dwelling units, EMDs, with less than 5 units be permitted in single or two-family historic residential districts without EMDs being treated as a non-conforming use. CPC has not provided any meaningful standards to determine when a building could qualify as an EMD. Further, it advocates eliminating the current CZO provision against EMD's expansion of the existing building footprint. The combined effect of these CPC recommendations would essentially lead to the elimination of single or two-family historic residential districts in New Orleans, a drastic rewriting of the CZO and the master plan. CPC also rejects the use of an overlay district to limit the allowances of EMDs in residential areas where the demand for student or other short-term rentals has already created incentives to overbuild. The CPC report states staff does not believe it is the provision or reestablishment of multifamily housing that is the cause of any issue related to student housing, but rather bulky additions to existing singles and doubles. Report at page 34. Staff seems to ignore those bulky additions are the tangible results of allowing EMDs. The current CPC recommendations will allow even more bulky additions. If the CPC is trying to upzone the city to create affordable housing, please at least try to learn from other cities' mistakes. There are plenty of examples. Next, from Alan Johnson, representing Faubourg Meridian Improvement Association in opposition to the application. The FMIA has submitted a letter, which you should have received, expressing concerns about this motion and study, which are the same we expressed in the spring when the issue first came up. First of all, as a neighborhood organization and historic district, we support the City Council's opposition to modifying a home's footprint. Second, we ask that you consider the peculiar position that Marigny is in. Our neighborhood has seen many residents pushed out by rising real estate values, and one of the major reasons is the growth of the tourist industry beyond the CBD and French Quarter. French Quarter has been given special considerations through the years, such as a moratorium on new hotels and short-term rentals, to preserve their residential integrity, while the Marigny has not been granted such courtesies. Not surprisingly, changes in our neighborhood have come faster than we can comprehend. Most profound has obviously been STRs, as a lack of density limits or any other controls has seen many people pushed out of our neighborhood and further away from their jobs. Also, the money that can be made on STRs has caused many landlords to push out long-term renters in favor of the quick buck that can be made by STRs and driven up real estate prices. We urge you to consider this issue and assure that these new units created by the conversion to multifamily be used to house actual residents, which we are struggling to retain, that have been pushed out of our neighborhood by banning STRs in these units. This is not without precedent, as the Riverfront Overlay approved by City Council in 2018 bans STRs to assure, as could best be done, that these developments would have residents in them. Additionally, we ask you to consider the growth in pied-à-terre, a less well-known development of our neighborhood. Many people are purchasing weekend crash pads for visits to New Orleans. This is a practice that happened in the French Quarter over 20 years ago, and measures were taken to slow down that growth. and the French Quarter has struggled for years to recover from the effects on their neighborhood character. We ask that you consider the special circumstances that the historic core is in when you consider this issue. Next, from Robert Abelson, 621 Broadway Street, in support of the application. There's a housing crisis in New Orleans. The problem is exacerbated by the current restrictions the city has applied on investors, local owners, and developers, preventing their ability to renovate rundown or unsafe properties. These restrictions limit the ability to reintroduce viable housing stock that meets the current building code standards. The only way forward is to add units and density, opening up the existing supply to be absorbed as affordable or alternative housing. It's simply a simple equation. We need new supply. Due to the current regulations, the city is actually losing housing. Rental units that were once built below grade, prone to flooding, are being abandoned, with little or no way to add them back into the housing stock. The city needs to allow people to invest and renovate properties in order to give both residents and students clean, updated places to live. There is no objective evidence that student apartments in the university area are adversely impacting affordable housing. By allowing investors to add bedrooms and renovate existing properties, it will alleviate the housing shortage in New Orleans. Next, from Maxwell Giardulo, representing Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center, 1340 Poydras Street, in support of the application. Single-family zoning was designed as a racist end around to the 1917 Supreme Court decision that struck down zoning explicitly by race. It delivered the same results, but was upheld because it didn't say the racist part out loud. New Orleans has its own unconstitutional racist zoning law struck down in 1927. However, we have continued with zoning practices that generally have the same result. Our city is deeply segregated, now even more than we were before Katrina. Among the tools in the segregation toolbox that we have regularly employed are downsizing huge swaths of the city, reducing density and height restrictions, and capitulating to NIMBY neighbors who consistently oppose affordable developments in wealthy or gentrifying neighborhoods. Cities and states across the country are considering bold steps to undo these past practices by eliminating single-family zoning. What's before you today is the tiniest of baby steps in comparison. There is nothing controversial about letting a fourplex be used as a fourplex. As the CPC stated, this is not new. It is a restoration of a use that likely preceded many current residents. If we're ever going to undo the segregation and inequality of our city, we must repudiate the idea that fourplexes are somehow degrading to a neighborhood and reject the notion that certain neighborhoods deserve to be protected from them. Do not fall for the red herring arguments about university districts. The CPC staff has made clear multiple times that there are a few of these buildings in university districts, and they are not the problem. The issue here is whether we continue forward with restrictive land use policies that perpetuate segregation, or whether we create the foundation for all neighborhoods that are open for all. Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center urges you to support the staff recommendations so that we can remove barriers from the redevelopment of small multifamily structures in all neighborhoods. Next, from SP Johnson, 2822 La Page Street, New Orleans, in support of the application. In regard to motion M 2020-279, please adopt sensible regulations to ensure that multifamily construction, in fact, creates affordable housing that is compatible with existing neighborhoods. Please require conditional use, overlay, or multifamily use in the university area so as to regulate density and overdevelopment. No increases in existing footprint. Cap the number of dwelling units generally at 4. No increase in the number of dwelling units over the established historic number, and please limit bedroom expansion. We are actively fighting blight in Carrollton, which is fast being consumed by developers of private student housing, creating impossible living conditions for homeowners and long-term residents. Please make Tulane University accountable for housing its undergraduates on campus. How did we arrive at an affordable housing shortage? Too many short-term rentals, which take the housing off the market for locals, not to mention the chronically low wages earned by working families. Please support a living wage for hardworking New Orleanians. None of this is easy. Next, from Gustavo Romero, 2600 General Pershing, in support of the application. I support the proposed language supplied by the city on pages 45 and all of its staff report. Next, from Catherine Swartout, 2820 South Saratoga Street, in support of the application. I'm in full support of the proposed language set forth by the city starting at page 45 of the staff report. As the city has pointed out, it takes on an average of 2 years from submitting a completed application for conditional use to being able to apply for a building permit. This is unsupportable for a person trying to timely update or renovate a structure. Homeowners do not have the time, money, or energy to bring their current units up to present code. This has been forcing renters to live in unsafe and subpar conditions with landlords that have zero incentive to update or renovate the space. Further, by expressly allowing the expansion of the structure's perimeter, homeowners can provide formerly below-grade spaces elsewhere within the buildable lot space without having to raise the entire building to absurd heights. As a suggestion, I would perhaps define documented legal history within the text of the CZO or otherwise reference the memo defining how this is determined. Further, as a student who fell in love with New Orleans and now calls it home, I feel the need to chime in on that it was my amazing neighbors that made me want to stay. While our initial stay may only be planned for a few years, we, students, are all potential neighbors and residents in the making, and we are equally part of the diverse fabric of this wonderful city. Next, from John Sullivan, 643 Magazine Street, representing Enterprise Community Partners, in support of the application. We ask the Commission support the staff's recommendation. Given the lack of affordable housing in the city, we should be making it easier, not harder, for multifamily housing to come back online. This is particularly true when a certain property has already been in the neighborhood for decades. Next, from Justin Schmidt, 909 Poydras Street, in opposition to the application. I'm encouraged to learn of the staff's request to further defer this docket until a future meeting to further consider issues raised during the review process. After reading the preliminary staff report, I am still concerned that in attempting to accommodate the council's request, staff has blurred the subtle yet critical line and distinctions between a structure containing a legally non-conforming use, as regulated in section 25.3 of the CZO, as opposed to a non-conforming structure as regulated in section 25.4 of the CZO. These are two defined terms in Article 26 of the CZO. Article 25 of the CZO treats these two building statuses very differently and regulates in very different manners how properties falling within one of these two categories are classified. The staff report and the discussion on this matter to date has focused merely on the analysis of structure based on a determination of whether it is an established multifamily dwelling or an established two-family dwelling, and has not factored in the nuances of section 25.3 and section 25.4. Reality is possible that either established multifamily or established two-family dwellings could be classified as a structure containing a legally non-conforming use or a non-conforming structure, and could then be in conflict with 25.3 or 25.4 of the CZO. Please look at this particular issue closely between today and the next meeting this docket is considered. Next, from that ends the comments for zoning docket 8320.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. Stephen, can you cite the recommendation by staff, which was what, deferral to the November 10th meeting?
That's correct.
Yeah.
All right, commissioners, are there any questions for staff or a motion?
Commissioner Lund, I have a question for staff. Could you tell us again the main reasons why you're requesting the deferral?
Sure, that is to basically respond to the public comments that we received sort of late in the process that we didn't have a chance to fully address in the staff report.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for staff or comments?
I have one. Is if a commissioner like me has a concern that they would like to see staff try to address, can staff change? Can staff address new issues and make adjustments to its report so that, in other words, we're going to get a whole new report next meeting that this is taken up? So now would be an appropriate time to express concerns and ask staff to consider an issue or so, or no?
So this is Bob. I can comment on that. Typically what we do is we'll send out the same report with an addendum about further consideration. And so in that further consideration section, there'll be an analysis. I'm I'm assuming that, you know, as we move forward into the next viewing of this, all of the issues that we feel that we want to respond to, or that you all direct us to respond to, we will address in that for further consideration section, and then adjust our recommendation accordingly.
Great. So let me just make a comment and ask staff to consider the possibility of addressing the short-term rental aspect of this. I don't think that the purpose of this motion and the consideration of this docket is to increase short-term rentals. It's to increase affordable housing. And if someone were to take advantage and take this and turn it into a short-term rental, it seems like it would be defeating the purpose and be counterproductive. So I would like to ask staff in the course of reevaluation and considering new aspects of this to consider a prohibition of short-term rentals in these units that become available for permitted use. One of the comments alluded to the fact that that had been done in some other regulation, which I'm not familiar with off the top of my head. But if that's true, and even if it's not, I'd like to ask staff to look into that when this comes back to us.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Steig. Any more comments or suggestions for staff from any other commissioner?
This is Commissioner Mobley. I'd like to echo Commissioner Steig's request.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mobley. Are there any other additions? Okay, is there a motion?
Commissioner Lund, I move that we defer this docket item for consideration at the November 10th CPC meeting. It's zoning docket 8320 that would be deferred for consideration until the November 10th CPC public hearing.
It's been moved by Commissioner Lund for deferral to the November 10th meeting. Is there a second to that motion?
Brown will second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Brown. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Flick.
Yes.
Commissioner Lund.
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley.
Yes.
Commissioner Steig.
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart. Yes. Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
Commissioner Witry. If that unanimous support for the motion, and we'll continue on to zoning docket 8420. We received no public comments for that zoning docket. Stephen, can you state the recommendation by staff?
Sure. The recommendation was, sorry, real quick, approval subject to 3 provisos.
Are there any comments or questions for staff? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Fleck. I'd like to make a motion for approval of docket 8420, subject to 3 provisos.
It's been moved by Commissioner Flick for approval. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Commissioner Mobley. I'll second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Mobley. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Flick.
Yes.
Commissioner Lund.
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Mobley.
Yes.
Commissioner Steig.
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart votes yes. Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
Unanimous in support for the motion. The motion passes. Next zoning docket 8520. We didn't receive any public comments for this zoning docket. Stephen, can you state staff's recommendation?
Approval subject to 3 provisos.
Are there any other comments or questions for staff? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
Commissioner Fleck will make a motion to approve zoning docket 8520, subject to 3 provisos.
It's been moved by Commissioner Flick for approval. Is there a second to that motion?
Seconded by Commissioner Lund.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Lund. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steve,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart votes yes. Commissioner Weaver,
Yes.
unanimous support for the motion. We'll continue on to zoning docket 8620. Once again, we did not receive any public comment for this zoning docket. Stephen, can you restate the recommendation by staff?
The staff recommendation is denial.
At this time now, are there any questions for staff or any comments? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Fleck. I have a question for staff. Is there any other way for them to get around being able to have a farmer's market besides the temporary permit?
No, really the only options are the temporary permit, which doesn't work for the applicant for reasons they've explained, and a zoning change. And the problem with any zoning change, not just this particular commercial district, is that the site doesn't have a history of commercial use, which is basically the master plan requirement for commercial zoning.
Are there any further questions for staff?
This is Commissioner Mobley, motion to deny zoning docket 08620.
Commissioner Steig seconds.
It's been moved by Commissioner Mobley for denial of zoning docket 8620, seconded by Commissioner Steig. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steve,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart, yes, in the affirmative. For denial, Commissioner Weaver.
Yes.
Unanimous support for the motion for denial for zoning docket 8620. We'll continue on with the agenda. Zoning docket 8720. We did not receive any public comments for this zoning docket. Stephen, can you restate the recommendation by staff?
Approval subject to provisos.
At this time now, Commissioners, are there any questions, comments for staff, or a motion for zoning docket 8720?
This is Commissioner Fleck. I'll make a motion for approval of zoning docket 8720, subject to 4 provisos.
It's been moved by Commissioner Flick for approval of zoning docket 8720. Is there a second to that motion?
Seconded by Commissioner Lund.
Been seconded by Commissioner Lund. Any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steve,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart, yes. Commissioner Weaver.
Yes.
Unanimous support for the motion, for approval for zoning docket 8720. We'll continue to move on to zoning docket 8820. We did not receive any public comment for that zoning docket. Stephen, can you please state the motion, the recommendation by staff?
Is approval subject to 1 waiver and 15 provisos.
At this time now, commissioners, are there any comments, questions for staff as it relates to this zoning docket? Any questions or comments? If there are no further questions or comments, is there a motion?
Commissioner Lon, I move for approval of the zoning docket 8820 as recommended in the staff report, subject to all, it was just provisos, correct?
One waiver, 15 provisos.
To the one waiver and 15 provisos as outlined in the staff report.
It's been moved by Commissioner Lund for approval of staff recommendation. Is there a second to that motion?
Commissioner Flick will second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Flick. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion on the motion? So then there's no further discussion. I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Flick.
Yes.
Commissioner Lund.
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley.
Yes.
Commissioner Steve.
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart, yes. Commissioner Weaver.
Yes.
Unanimous support for approval for zoning docket. We'll continue move on to zoning docket 8920. We did not receive any public comment for zoning docket 8920. Stephen, can you please restate staff's recommendation?
Approval with 2 waivers and 18 provisos.
At this time now, commissioners, are there any comments or questions for staff as it relates to zoning docket 8920?
This is Kyle. Motion to approve staff recommendation.
It's been moved by Commissioner Weaver for approval of zoning docket 8920. Is there a second to that motion?
Mobley seconds.
Commissioner Mobley seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? No further discussion. I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Flick.
Yes.
Commissioner Lund.
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley.
Yes.
Commissioner Steve.
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart, yes. Commissioner Weaver.
Yes.
Unanimous support for zoning docket 8920, and the motion is carried for approval. Moving on to zoning docket 9020. At this time now, we're going to read the public comment into the record. We received public comment for zoning docket 9020.
Mr. Chairman, the first comment is from Alphonse Smith, representing Giving Hope Foundation as Executive Director in support of the application. In addition to Mr. Duhan's remarks for the context about the overall holistic vision for the site, future services supporting community residents will come from the development of the adjacent lots facing the I-10 East Service Road. The location will be the future headquarters of Giving Hope, which includes a community space, food pantry, and kitchen dining area. Next comment is from Clarence Richardson II. 11404 North St. Andrews Circle, New Orleans, in opposition to this application. I'm in opposition to zoning docket 9020, Giving Hope properties 1 and 2. Next comment is from Troy Henry. 2281 Oakmont Drive, New Orleans, in opposition to this application. He's representing self and Eastover Property Owners Association. My name is Troy Henry, and I serve as chairman of the board of directors of the Eastover Property Owners Association, the neighborhood adjacent to the proposed development. I represent 377 home and property owners of the subdivision. In addition to Eastover, the nearby neighborhoods of Lake Bullard, McKendall Estates, and Lake Forest Estates are united in their vehement opposition to the residential portion of the development. Our opposition is based on 3 primary objections. After spending years of the community working with the CPC to develop zoning standards, we find it offensive that a project that blatantly violates the intention of the city code is being reconsidered. We believe that the Reed East corridor between I-510 and Reed Boulevard and I-10 and Dwyer should remain free of any additional multifamily developments, and that the I-10 service road area being discussed should remain intact as a commercial zone only. 2, the proposed residential complex lacks infrastructure for a senior community. It has no sidewalks, no public transportation, and one-way access out of the area. Proposed site was not selected for the best usage. It was selected because it represented a cheaper solution for the developer. 3, more importantly, we believe that inserting low-income senior housing into the neighborhood will severely impair and diminish the property values of Eastover homes and our adjacent neighbors. This means that a cheap solution for a developer would come at the expense of many New Orleans East families. Since Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans East homeowners have not been able to realize the market appreciation of other parts of the city. In fact, our values remain below the pre-Katrina rates. Approving this project will be the death knell of our property values. In conclusion, on behalf of myself and my fellow Eastover residents, we commend the charitable mission of the Giving Hope Project and the commitment to feeding the less fortunate. However, we remain unified in our opposition to the proposed project and will do everything within our means and ability to stop the residential portion of this project from proceeding in our backyard. Sincerely, Troy Henry, Chairman, Eastover Property Owners. Next is from Tony Lee, 6290 Eastover Drive, in opposition. Dear Commissioners, I urge you to deny the proposed planned development by Giving Hope Property. Single-family construction fits within the surrounding neighborhoods. Low-income senior housing development is inconsistent with the heavy commercial area surrounded by car dealerships. The goal should be to preserve existing neighborhoods and promote commercial developments to sustain the economically challenged community. Thank you, Tony Lee. Next from Jessica Greeley, 6301 Eastover Drive, in opposition to the application. I oppose because I believe it will affect our property values and quality of life, not to mention there are zoning changes being made in New Orleans East that would less likely give New Orleans East the opportunity to bring sustainable economic development. Next from Rose Richardson, 11404 North St. Andrews Circle, in opposition. I'm in opposition to zoning docket 9020 for the reasons that were submitted to you on October 19th and should be included in your packets. They are the same reasons as to why I was in opposition to zoning docket 6920. Just because it is being rebranded through a city council motion does not change the undesirable proposed for which this motion is being proposed, should the zoning docket pass. Please do not approve based on a clearly political backdoor maneuver. Thank you. Next from Tangi Wall, 111 Eastview Drive, in opposition. I am in opposition to the proposed development because it does not conform to the city's master plan, nor does it conform to the footprint of the nearby neighborhood. This proposed development will have a negative impact on homeowner property values in the area and additionally undermines the current economic development opportunities in the area. New Orleans East already has an excessive concentration of low-income multi-housing and currently in existence and newly proposed already. This proposed development is not needed, and most importantly, it is an affront to the financial investment of the dedicated, hardworking homeowners in this area, and it will have a negative impact on the quality of life in our community. Next from Chui Dang, 6290 Eastover Drive, in opposition. I'm in writing to express my opposition to the Giving Hope proposed plan development via City Council Motion M2304. Please deny this plan development based on the following adverse effects. 1, it does not comply with the applicable standards of Article 5. 2, use of the specified location is not consistent with the general commercial district master plan. 3, it is not compatible with the existing adjacent neighborhood and community character. Plan development is simply a conceptual design lacking in details, i.e. unpolished site plan, raised cottages, presumably handicap accessible but no handicap ramps, railings. Once the plan development is approved, the developer can change the original and conceptual design without CPC approval. Nearly all the residents of Eastover are completely opposed to the addition of low-income senior housing that will cause traffic and safety hazards in a heavy commercial zone. Traffic and safety of pedestrians, walkable and bicycle are areas of major concern. Any plan development should consider the continuing impact of heavy traffic to the food pantry, which is an inserted ancillary project. Housing is the primary goal, and the pedestrian traffic of the senior housing. Eastover property values are likely to go down in the area if small subsidized cottages are built. An overwhelming saturation of low-income senior housing is unattractive to potential economic development within the I-10 and 510 corridor, bordering the now abandoned, dilapidated Six Flags. Respectfully, Chewy Gang. Next from Rosalind Malone, 110 Pinehurst Court, New Orleans, in opposition. I, Rosin Malone of 110 Pinehurst Court, New Orleans, oppose the zoning docket 9020 request by City Council Motion M2304 for a planned development at 13350 I-10 East Service Road. Thank you for your consideration. Next, from Hattie Bouthard, 151 Turnberry Drive, in opposition. In opposition, I oppose the application. The property is zoned for industrial development, is not appropriate location for senior housing. Next, from Alonzo Thomas, 160 Oakmont Drive, in opposition. Besides diminishing our property values, there are several problems with building 600 to 900 square foot bungalow-style multifamily units directly behind our subdivision. Next, from Jill Labatt, 210 Oakmont Drive, in opposition. Infrastructure in area will change. Next, from Diana Hayes, 120 Pinehurst Court, in opposition. Decline in property value. That's the last public comment.
Thank you, Paul. At this time now, Steve, can you state the recommendation?
The staff, yeah, the staff recommendation is denial.
Okay. At this time now, commissioners, are there any comments or questions for staff as it relates to the zoning docket?
I had one. This is Commissioner Stieg. I just wanted staff to explain the master plan implications. I think we've heard that it is inconsistent with the master plan. Can you elaborate or explain why that's the case?
Yeah, this is Stephen. I can answer that. The language that's included in the master plan description for general commercial, which is the designation this property has, is silent to residential, which implies that residential is not allowed. The only exception is that there is contemplation of above the ground floor dwellings. So above the ground floor dwellings are like if you have a multi-story building and you have a commercial use on the bottom, second story residential is allowed basically as an ancillary part of a development. So outside of that, there's no contemplation of residential use and no contemplation of standalone single family residential development. Because the master plan doesn't contemplate that sort of land use, the plan development can't be approved under the master plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for staff? I have another one, Stephen. So we heard from the applicant that he's owned this property, this piece of property for 20 years. I guess at what point should we potentially look at maybe changing a zone change to encourage some type of economic development in that area, or some type of development?
Yeah, I'll let Bob comment on it. Comment on this. It's really a master plan question because it has to do with when we're gonna take another look at the master plan designation for this property and others in the area.
Okay.
Yeah, to follow up on Stephen, we've said for a couple of years now, and you all may recall that in the spring of 2018 was the last time we did a revision to the master plan. So the charter gives us a window of 1 to 5 years within which we have to consider whether to entertain any additional revisions. So that window extends out into 2013 or 2023, excuse me. So there has been talk, especially in New Orleans East, about looking at certain sites for to consider changes, but nothing formal has been requested. And right now, the CPC staff does not have the capacity to entertain to go into a master plan revision process. The charter requirements for that process mean that it would probably be a 1 to 2 year process. And so it would be a real heavy lift for the staff. And right now, I don't think we have the bandwidth to do that. But certainly if the commission wants us to to rethink that and how we can balance priorities, we can certainly have that conversation.
Thank you, Bob. Are there any other comments or questions for staff as it relates to zoning docket 920? Or a motion from the commission?
This Commissioner Stieg, I'm going to make a motion for denial, but somewhat reluctantly, because I think it certainly seems like a worthwhile project and one with good intentions. But I don't think we ought to get emotionally swayed by the good intentions of a project if it's inconsistent with the master plan. So my motion is for denial with the hope that either some of those procedures we just discussed to find a way to reconsider the master plan could be made. But for right now, I do feel like we're constrained by the master plan, so I'm moving for denial.
It's been moved by Commissioner Steve for the denial for zoning docket 9020. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Commissioner Mobley. I will second with considerably less reluctance.
It's been second by Commissioner Mobley. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I want to say I'm close to where Commissioner Stieg is on this. I know the work of the foundation and think highly of it. I think it's actually a technical piece of feedback I have. When these come through council motions, they don't go through the MPP process as it is designed. And in that process, there's a lot of give and take and feedback with neighborhoods and people that live in communities. And so I'm where Commissioner Steve is. I think this is a fantastic project. I struggle with not hearing the voices of the community present in support of this and having the feedback be as strong as it was. It puts us in the difficult position as a commission. So I think very highly of the charitable organization. I think highly of their work. I think the project has real merit. But I think from a technical standpoint, this came in a way that did not have the public loop feedback, which for the interpretation of policy and of the zoning laws leaves this commission in the position where I'm reluctantly in a place where I'm going to have to support the motion.
And I'd like to add, I share those same sentiments as Commissioner Stieg and Commissioner Weberg has already expressed. That Mr. Duhan and the work that's taking place through Giving Hope is tremendous work for the community. I think it's probably a worthwhile cause. And I think as a commissioner, especially when we think about planning, particularly in New Orleans East and all across the city, the work that we do is, very important. And then to look at a piece of land that has been idle for the last 20 years, that we maybe need to take another look at what we can do to make that a vibrant area that works well for all stakeholders. So we'd like to see, as Commissioner Stieg and Commissioner Weberg express, I'll be voting to support the motion as well. Are there any other comments?
Just to echo those of Commissioner Stieg and Weberg, and to you as well, Mr. Chair. I reluctantly support this motion because I hate to see a project that looks like it has a great bit of value to the community and also the health, safety, and welfare of the community, which is why I considered going against the specifics of the land use portion of the master plan to support it in that light. But again, we'll support Commissioner Stieg on this as well.
Any other comments? If not, I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Flick.
Yes.
Commissioner Lund. Commissioner Lund. Commissioner Mobley.
Yes.
Commissioner Stieg.
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart votes yes in support. Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
and we'll go back to Commissioner Lund. Are you still with us? If not, let the record show that the unanimous support for the motion with the exclusion of Commissioner Lund's vote.
I'm sorry.
Design review 13720.
No public comment, and the staff recommendation is approval.
All right. Are there any comments or questions for staff from any commissioner? If not, a motion.
Brown will move approval.
Seconded by Commissioner Lund.
It's been moved by Commissioner Brown, seconded by Commissioner Lund. Is there any further discussion on the motion for approval? If not, I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steeg,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart, yes. Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
unanimous support for the motion for approval. Subdivision docket 8920.
No public comment, and the staff recommendation is tentative approval with final approval subject to 1 waiver and 3 provisos.
Is there any comments or questions for staff for subdivision docket 8920? Or is there a motion from any commissioner?
Commissioner Mobley, motion to approve as per staff recommendation.
Moved by Commissioner Mobley for approval based on staff recommendation. Is there a second to that motion?
Can you write that? A few minutes. I'm on the end of the meeting. Okay.
Is there a second to that motion? It's been seconded by Commissioner Flick. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steed,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart, yes. Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
unanimous support for approval for subdivision docket 8920. And now we'll consider our last agenda item, consideration of the proposed 2021 regular meeting schedule. There's no public comment on that. So commissioners, any questions?
Commissioner Lund, I move for approval of the proposed 2021 regular CPC meeting schedule.
It's been moved by Commissioner Lund for approval of the 2021 CPC meeting schedule. Is there a second to that motion?
Commissioner Flick, a second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Flick. Is there any further discussion on the motion? No further discussion. I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Flick,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley,
Yes.
Commissioner Steeg,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart, yes. Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
unanimous support of approval for the 2021 regular meeting schedule for the City Planning Commission. At this time now, do we have any committee reports? There are no committee reports. The chair will entertain a motion for adjournment at 4:15.
Motion to adjourn from Commissioner Weidberg.
Second by Brown.
Moved by Commissioner Weaver, seconded by Commissioner Brown for adjournment. If there's no unreadiness, I'll, by show of hands, and on support, thumbs up. Unanimous support for the motion, and we'll be adjourned at 4:15.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Stay safe.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.